I raced back home, and I think I ran every red light there was, trying to get to my house, and the phone was ringing, and it kept ringing.
The man who changed rock and roll forever died nearly 50 years ago, and we still don't have the complete paperwork explaining how. Not because the government buried it, not because of some conspiracy, but because one family said no and the courts agreed with them. August 16, 1977, the world's biggest musical icon collapsed inside his Memphis mansion. Within hours, paramedics arrived. Within hours after that, he was pronounced gone. Ginger Alden, his companion at the time, discovered him unresponsive. The scene was immediate, chaotic, devastating. Television networks interrupted programming worldwide. By morning, every major publication had already run the headline, "The King of Rock and Roll was dead." But what nobody told you then, and what most people still don't understand now, is that there are actually 2 autopsy reports, and only one of them the public has ever been allowed to see. The official story was simple. Dr. Jerry Francisco, Shelby County's medical examiner, signed off on a straightforward explanation: cardiac arrhythmia. His heart stopped. End of story. That's what went into the newspapers. That's what shaped how a grieving world understood what happened. A 2-page summary became 50 years of public truth. But the full medical picture, the detailed toxicology results, the complete tissue analysis, none of that made it into that summary. And Vernon Presley, Elvis's father, immediately recognized the gap. Here's where the story shifts. Within days of Elvis's death, Dr. George Nichopoulos, Elvis's personal physician, obtained written authorization from Vernon to conduct a second private autopsy. This wasn't a state procedure. This wasn't filed with government record keepers. This was a completely separate medical examination commissioned by the family themselves. The procedure was carried out inside Baptist Memorial Hospital, the same place where Elvis had been pronounced dead. The findings were documented. The toxicology reports were completed, and then they disappeared into private medical records. And this is the part that changes everything, because the family privately commissioned this autopsy rather than the state ordering it. The law treated those files as private property. Medical confidentiality kicked in. The Presley family, not some federal judge, decided what happened to that report. What did they find that made keeping it sealed worth 50 years of speculation? Now, reporters tried to crack this open. In the early 1980s, journalists from ABC's investigative program 2020 actually took the case to court. They wanted a judge to force the medical examiner's office to release the complete toxicological and pharmacological findings. They lost. The case climbed all the way to Tennessee's Supreme Court. The court ruled in 1982 that nobody could force the release of privately held medical records just because the public was curious. The autopsy stayed sealed. It's still sealed today. But there's a distinction worth making here, because most of what circulates online gets this wrong. There was never a government order locking these files away for exactly 50 years. Tennessee law does require that the official death certificate, not the autopsy, stays private for 50 years after death. 2 different legal mechanisms. One shared deadline, 2027, that's when the death certificate becomes a public record. But the full autopsy, the one Dr. Nichopoulos commissioned, that's private family property, and the family has never agreed to release it. So if Elvis died of a simple heart attack, why commission a second autopsy in the first place? Why keep it hidden? The answer starts with understanding Dr. George Nichopoulos. Everyone called him Dr. Nick. He wasn't just any physician. He was Elvis's gatekeeper, the man who controlled access to nearly every substance that went into his patient's body. And the documented numbers are staggering. In just the first 8 months of 1977, the final 8 months of Elvis's life, Dr. Nick prescribed him over 10,000 doses of various controlled medications. 10,000 in 8 months, all through legal prescriptions, all authorized by the same doctor. These weren't just sleeping pills. These were powerful medications intended to manage pain, control mood, regulate sleep, maintain alertness. substances with serious addiction potential. Elvis wasn't even Dr. Nick's only high-profile patient. He also treated Jerry Lee Lewis, rock and roll pioneer. His name came up in connection with Muhammad Ali as well. This wasn't a doctor with one problem patient he couldn't say no to. This was a pattern spanning multiple famous names over multiple years. The Tennessee Board of Medical Examiners noticed it first. In January 1980, just 3 years after Elvis died, the board found Dr. Nichopoulos guilty on 10 of 20 counts of indiscriminately overprescribing controlled substances. Not to Elvis alone, to 16 different patients. The punishment was relatively light: 3 months suspended license, 3 years probation. But the message was clear. His own peers, under oath, concluded he had a documented pattern of overprescribing. And here's the critical part. This finding came before any criminal trial, before prosecutors ever indicted him, before any jury weighed in. How does a doctor with an already documented history of overprescribing to multiple patients walk into a criminal trial and somehow walk out with 0 convictions? Later that same year, 1980, Dr. Nichopoulos faced 14 criminal counts, illegally overprescribing dangerous, habit-forming medications. 2 of those counts specifically involved prescriptions he'd given Elvis between May 1976 and August 1977. 2 counts directly tied to the final months before Elvis died. The trial began in September 1981. It immediately became something different from a normal prosecution. It became a public character defense. Fellow physicians took the stand for Dr. Nichopoulos. One described him as an exceptional practitioner when dealing with demanding, complicated patients. The argument was that managing Elvis required extraordinary medical knowledge and patience. Not every doctor would attempt it. The jury appeared to find that persuasive. Partway through the trial, the judge dismissed several counts for insufficient evidence. Prosecutors, recognizing weakness in their case, decided not to call remaining witnesses. Their testimony would only repeat what the jury had already heard. November 1981. The jury acquitted Dr. Nichopoulos on every remaining charge. The system decided his prescribing, while excessive, didn't constitute criminal intent. But the story doesn't end there. 14 years later, 1995, the same Tennessee Board of Medical Examiners that had already found him guilty of overprescribing permanently revoked his medical license. The board stated plainly he had been systematically overprescribing to numerous patients for years. The same doctor who walked out of criminal court with no convictions eventually lost his license entirely. If he really did nothing criminal, why did the medical profession itself finally say he couldn't be trusted? Into this vacuum of sealed records and contradictory legal outcomes, speculation exploded. And for nearly 5 decades, that speculation is almost all anyone has had to work with. The most persistent theory isn't some tabloid fabrication. It's a serious medical argument raised by doctors as well as lay researchers. Toxicology information that has leaked over the years, partial disclosures. Independent medical commentary suggests that multiple prescription medications were present in Elvis's system at the time of death. The official cause said cardiac arrhythmia, natural causes, a heart attack. But if multiple powerful medications were in his bloodstream, could their combined effects have placed additional strain on his cardiovascular system? Could they have tipped his heart over the edge? That theory has never been definitively confirmed or definitively refuted. The complete evidence is sealed. Then there are other theories. Some claim the body buried at Graceland isn't actually Elvis at all. Others push claims about a casket being secretly reopened, revealing something hidden inside. These claims have no documented exhumations behind them, no court records, no named forensic teams. They remain unconfirmed online rumors rather than established facts. And that's the real tragedy. Legitimate medical questions have been buried beneath 50 years of speculation and conspiracy theories, making it almost impossible to separate documented evidence from what's simply been invented to fill the silence. While the medical questions piled up, something else was happening. The business of Elvis Presley never stopped moving. Colonel Tom Parker, Elvis's longtime manager, attended the funeral just long enough to secure Vernon's agreement that he'd retain control over posthumous earnings, even as the estate itself was nearly bankrupt. That control eventually got challenged in court. Parker was eventually removed. Priscilla Presley stepped in as executor and co-built Elvis Presley Enterprises. That company transformed Graceland from a mansion into a tourism empire, a licensing machine, an image management apparatus. And that same structure, the people controlling Elvis's legacy, managing his estate, deciding what stories get told, those are the same people who decided the sealed autopsy would stay sealed. None of that proves anything was hidden in that report. But it does mean the decision has never been made by neutral outsiders. It's been made by the same family and business operation that has profited from keeping the story simple and uncomplicated for 50 years. What does that mean for how we understand the truth? There's another layer to this story that gets overlooked. Inside that house during Elvis's final years was a 9-year-old girl. Lisa Marie Presley was born in February 1968. That made her 9 years old on August 16, 1977. In her memoir, released after her own death in 2023, she revealed that she'd written a poem in her diary before her father passed. The line that stayed with her, "I hope my daddy doesn't die." Even as a child, she could see something was wrong. She witnessed her father in visible pain. She watched the medication dependency take hold. She was there. Then one day, he was wheeled out to an ambulance. She was told he was dead. In her own words, her entire life ended that afternoon. The aftermath never really released her. She struggled through teenage years following his death. She later battled severe prescription medication dependency as an adult. She wrote about addiction consuming major portions of her life. She died in January 2023 at 54, only years after losing her son Benjamin Keogh in 2020. None of this proves what's inside the sealed autopsy. But it's a reminder of something crucial. Behind sealed reports and courtroom drama was a family living with real, unglamorous consequences of addiction across generations. A legacy shaped by medication, loss, and unanswered questions. When people ask who benefits from keeping that report sealed, is the answer really about privacy? Or is it about protecting a story that's been more profitable than the truth? We're approaching an inflection point. When 2027 arrives, two things happen. The state's official death certificate becomes public record after 50 years. And according to consistent reporting over years, the Presley family's privately commissioned autopsy is expected to finally become accessible as well. For the first time since 1977, researchers, journalists, and medical professionals could directly examine the toxicology tables, tissue findings, and complete medical evidence that's been fought over in courts and speculated about for 2 generations. What that report can and cannot do matters. It cannot confirm theories about a secretly reopened casket when no documented reopening exists. It won't prove Elvis faked his death and disappeared, but it could provide clearer medical evidence about which medications were actually present in his system and whether their combined effects may have contributed to his condition. It could clarify whether cardiac arrhythmia was the complete picture or whether the truth was more complicated than the original 1977 account suggested. For close to 50 years, one family controlled the fullest version of the truth about how the king of rock and roll actually died. Not because a judge ordered it, not because the government seized it, but because the family exercised legal rights over private medical property. What does that say about public truth and private grief? In 2027, that control finally expires. A man who redefined American music, dead for nearly 50 years, and the public still doesn't have the complete paperwork on how he died. Not due to government action, not a legal mandate hiding it away, simply because one family decided the world wasn't ready for the full answer yet. That's documented legal fact. It's sitting in court records from the 1980s. It's still playing out today. When 2027 finally arrives, it won't just be fans and casual historians watching. Doctors will be ready. Toxicologists will be ready. Journalists who've spent decades waiting for the chance to check their theories against actual medical numbers instead of speculation will finally get their chance. If this story shifted something in how you understand Elvis's death and the power of privacy laws, share it. Like this video and subscribe to Crime Brief, because when that sealed medical record finally opens in 2027, we'll be breaking down exactly what the evidence actually says about one of music's greatest mysteries.